Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in for the episode number 3 of the Success Naps series. This week, due to my voice being so coarse and me having a flu, I decided not to go for an interview, but I'm gonna share with you the 3 episodes that I believe are the most powerful of my whole podcast. That's gonna be interesting, because you might agree or you might disagree with my choices. So without further ado, hopefully you're going to enjoy them as much as I did when I had to record them. There is one single commodity on this earth, and that is your time. Nothing else. Diamonds, pretty rare, right? Gold, even rarer, but it still can be extracted from the earth. There can be gold mined from asteroids, but when it's your time to die, that's it. You don't get extra minutes, extra seconds, extra hours, or whatever. It's game over. Okay? So, I'm gonna talk about the idea of minimalism in the sense of minimalism of your own schedule, of your own time. And this is actually called or defined as prioritization. And it's very interesting. I'm gonna start with an anecdote. What are the most important things to you in life? You're gonna say, I don't know. I've never thought about that. Who are you? Some guru? Yeah, fair enough. You can ask me that, but I will reply, well, no. Just look back to your week and tell me what you chose to do. Those are the things that you are finding at this point in time most important for yourself. It can be negative stuff such as instant gratification, like you spend 6 hours on Instagram. If you're doing that, that's what you value at this point, right? Prioritization is basically our way of saying, hey, I want to do all this shit. And if you're an A type, okay, I don't agree with those personality types, but let's say that you're a person who strives for more, right? So if you're that type of personality, you're an overachiever and you want to do this and that and start a new business and have 5 children and also hook up with the most beautiful person on the planet and maybe get a large yacht and I don't know what else. But you want to do this and you want to do this week or next week if possible, right? And this will never happen. We tend to underestimate how little time we got. Like, we think we've got so much time. It's actually a really interesting school of thought in psychology that says that you can always allow only for 2 main actions during a day. And, well, I don't agree completely with that. If you're looking at your schedule, let's say you're working, right? And your work can either be your passion or not. Most of the times it's not. And if it's not, it is a problem that you might want to solve if you would be the person that you desire to be. This is an idea, a Jungian idea, right? We all tend to believe that there is a version of ourselves that it's the best, it's the greatest of what we can achieve. And that version of ours has probably already won a Formula 1 championship and he's already becoming a millionaire by age 25 and he's probably having his life all sorted out. But see, the nature of our reality is that it's the sum of the choices that we've done and of the actions that we took. Because, you can have some choices in life, but then you also have to follow up on those choices, right? You can't say, hey, I'm gonna learn C++ and that's it. Just by making a decision, everything should be fine. No, it's not. So be very wary and actually be very mindful when you prioritize things, because that's gonna show you where you're at right now, what you value. If you value spending your time with friends, for example, well, let's say you've got 2 options: to either read a book or spend the Thursday night with your friends. You're gonna choose to spend the Thursday night with your friends, right? That's what you value. It's normal. And it's as in the case of pain. So, Lots of people are arguing that pain doesn't exist or whatever. Yeah, you know what? If you're feeling pain, you're gonna feel it, no matter if you believe in it or not. You might believe that pain is not real, but if somebody punches you in, let's say, the stomach, then you're gonna feel an immense amount of pain. So I actually met this guy, this Portuguese guy, very smart guy, and all the people that I met at that course were incredibly smart and highly functional individuals. Like, I was actually really impressed with all of them, and they had amazing scheduling solutions for their problems because they have way more work than I do. So this guy was saying that you can have two approaches. Either you can be very structured and well work overtime because a work week of 60 hours, or you would go into juggling mode, which means I have these 3 crystals in my hand and I'm juggling them, and those crystals can represent whatever, like your hobbies, your clients, your things that you have to do, your deadlines, whatever, and they can be more than 3, right? And you're juggling them, and then your, let's say, supervisor or someone with authority comes and says, hey, how about you do this for me? I really need your help with this, or whatever they might say. Your response should be, I'm juggling these 3 pieces of crystal. If I stop, I have room in my hands for only 2 pieces of crystal, and one is gonna break. So if what you're telling me to do is more important than that crystal, then yeah, by all means, I should do that. If not, let me just juggle them, because right now I'm in a very, very delicate sort of balance, right? But I won't be anymore. And see, this guy was right. And I've been in firefighting mode this whole week, and it's not only work related, right? There's lots and lots of menial stuff and admin work. That's how things are. Sometimes they pile up and you have to figure what's more important to you, what you can juggle, what you can delegate, what you can prioritize. So see, some things you can't just dismiss, right? I can't dismiss the fact that I have workers in my house right now, so I had to spend my time working from home. So see, you're either a juggler or you're that type who knows when and what you have to do. And I would argue that if you would have the choice, you would always pick to be the guy who knows at what time and what hour he has to do this and that. But for that, again, you need to prioritize and to say, hey, you know what, I can't spend 8 hours working on this, I can only spend 4. Are you okay with that? Yes or no? If not, then tell me what can I do, right? Because there are only a limited amount of hours in your day, and you're also maybe paid for a limited amount of hours, and I have to do overtime, but that's because I want to, not because somebody else forces me. Okay, and that's because I decided, hey, I'm gonna do 4 hours of overtime today. Fuck it, but tomorrow I'm leaving at 6. That's it. It's my prioritizing. Storytelling lies at the core of human existence. Before being able to write, we were able to teach our children and basically all of the members of our tribes how to behave and what to do in order to survive by the spoken word. Today I want to share with you a very powerful story, and it's attributed to many Chinese dynasties. So I will choose to attribute it to the Tang dynasty in China. The Tang, even if it's less famous than the Han dynasty, the Tang is the one where China suffered their golden ages. So in that time, for 300 years, Chinese were being ruled by this Tang dynasty, and they, at that point, they were the most powerful country on the whole earth. And the territories that they've lost after the dynasty fell, well, they were never able to reconquer for 1,000 years afterwards. So you cannot underestimate how powerful this dynasty was. And it was one that encouraged openness and encouraged different religions and encouraged things that we don't take for granted in the year 600. So this is a very powerful story and it's an anecdote. So join me on the far side to dive into the anecdote of maybe so, maybe not. There was once a village that had among its people a very wise old man. The villagers trusted this man. He was the one that was always asked when something went wrong, to provide the villagers with answers to their questions and to their concerns. One day a farmer from the village went to this wise man and said, "Oh, help me, a horrible thing has happened. My ox has died, and I don't know how to plow my field. I don't have an animal to plow my field. Isn't this the worst thing that could have possibly happened?" The wise old man replied, "Maybe so, maybe not." The man hurried frantically back to the village and just started talking with his peers. He thought that the wise man went insane. How couldn't he see that his ox dying was terrible? But the very next day, something weird happened. Near this man's farm, a very young horse has been seen, and this horse was beautiful. The man was able to tame the horse and run to the wise man and said, "Oh, wise man, you are so right. Losing my ox was a blessing in disguise. I would have never captured a new horse if I had the ox because I wouldn't have the space for it." And the wise man replied very calmly, "Maybe so, maybe not." The farmer was intrigued, but he didn't care. He just went back home. 3 days passed, and one day, while the son was riding the horse back from the fields, he broke his leg because he fell from the saddle. The man rushed again to the elder, being really sad about the whole development, and realized that it wasn't that blessing in disguise, and he was incredibly disappointed. He told the old man, "How did you know that my horse was not a good thing? You were right again. My son got injured, and he won't be able to help me with the crop, and without the power of my son, how can I basically finish in time? I won't be able to ever do it. You must agree with me this time. This is a tragedy." The wise man again looked at the sky, then looked at the man who was frantically gesturing in front of his face, and he said calmly, "Maybe so, maybe not." The farmer went berserk. "How can you say that? How can you be so calm? You don't understand us. Why are we coming to you for advice?" Well, after this, the old man said nothing, and the farmer realized that he wouldn't get any more answers, so he just left. The next day, the very morning, he heard 3 knocks at the door. The imperial army came to recruit his son, because some rebels just started a war in their province. But they saw the son, and they saw the fact that he had his foot broken, so he was the only one in the village that didn't have to go to war. In that war, the rebels won, and all of the youngsters of the village died because the army got ambushed. So now the farmer pondered. He didn't go back to the wise man, but there is a very strong moral of the story. Truth is, we have no idea of what's going to happen. We just think that we do. We make a big deal out of things, and we blow up scenarios, and I am one of the people who are most likely to do so. Again, especially if you're neurotic as myself, that doesn't help, but you have to keep it in check. It's your personality, but it's not a death sentence. That aside, we always take things out of context and we make them bigger than they have to be. And most of the times we're wrong. And see, again, with the joys in life, nobody can tell you if something is a blessing in disguise or if that's indeed a terrible thing, because your life is not finished yet. And even though the lives of the people who are impacted by this will not be finished for such a long time until you would be dead, so the consequences keep on perpetuating further and further in time. It's like a ripple effect. So most of the time, we don't know if a situation is indeed terrible for us or if it's a great thing for us. Definitely rejections don't feel like successes. Like, I can guarantee you that most of the times when I heard no, it wasn't pleasant in terms of rejections from different projects, like rejections in the business when trying to sell something. I mean, those were kind of tough because I realized that maybe I had the right thing for them, but they weren't sold because of my technique or because something that I said or did. So maybe that was a blessing in disguise. And I believe that you can learn something from each rejection. So the moral of the story is that we should just stay open to all the possibilities. This is how true wealth of spirit and of material things is created. Being always on the lookout for possibilities. So with this in mind, just remember, if something happens, it doesn't happen to you, it just happens. And if you think of it as a positive or negative thing, you have to always say, hey, was it such a terrible thing? Maybe so, maybe not. If someone would ask you what you want in life, you probably have already a huge list of items. Because we tend to want a lot of things, and actually more important than that, we tend to want a lot of emotions. We don't want things for what they actually are, for their physical properties. We want things for the emotions that they create within us, and for the emotions that we can feel while using those items. And this is a major point in advertising, and I'm sure that you're aware of. So, I came across a system of gauging, and it's very interesting because awareness and self-awareness is the first step towards anything, towards forming a habit, towards changing anything in your life. You have to be aware that there is a problem, and this makes sense logically. There are no studies on that. I mean, there are a few research papers, but again, 80% or 90% of the research papers, well, the standard of testing isn't that great, and I would recommend you just trust the double-blind studies. Those are the ones that actually matter. The rest of them, well, they can be affected by biases. So with this in mind, this is not necessarily a scientific method, but you don't need hard science in order to be able to quantify where you're at. So you have to define, and I've got this idea from, well, initially I found about it from Tony Robbins, but then I realized it went back way more than that. So the first historically accurate description of this I found at Buddhists, and it's called the Wheel of Life. I'm not sure if that's what the Buddhists used to call it because it's such an ancient term, but the whole idea is that you want your life to be great in so many dimensions, and you want your life to be also balanced. So imagine you have a wheel made of 4 characteristics, and of course my wheel has way more than that, and I'm going to provide you with one at the end of this. But let's say you have 4 dimensions. The first one is your health and physical body, another one emotions, relations, romance, another one would be your mission, your meaning and spirituality, and the last one, let's say, would be your finances, right? So if you have a very high health and physical body, but a very low meaning and mission and spirituality, let's say you have an 8 in your body and a 2 in your mission, well, there is an imbalance. You can't use a wheel which looks like in a Flintstones movie, right? It has to be smooth. It has to somehow form a sphere, right? Otherwise you're gonna get stuck. Okay, you can still use it, but that's why the wheels on our cars are not in a trapezoidal shape, let's say, right? So this is a tool to gauge maybe where you need the most help, or what you actually want to improve first. Or you can be as me, because I decided that, hey, look, maybe I want to max out one of those dimensions before the others. So I didn't care too much about the whole metaphor of being able to drive with my wheel of life, right? I didn't care about that. I just wanted to know the dimensions of my life. I wanted to know the areas in which, well, I want to improve faster. And that really helps, because that's the first step. That's step 0 in goal setting. Goal setting is really tough, and it's a topic that I massively love. But for the sake of this audio and for brevity, I'm not going to discuss why I'm giving you these dimensions of life. So there are a lot of exercises that you can do to find your own dimensions. You can ask this question: what's the most important thing for me in? And for example, what's the most important for me in life? What's the most important for me in business? What's the most important for me in relationships? And you have to deep dive, because for example, if you say, hey, I want money. Well, money, it's again a mean to an emotion, right? Because you don't want the papers, you don't want the numbers in your account. No, you want the stuff that you can buy, you want the experience that you can buy, you want the quality of life, you want to have the security, which is one of our main drives, right? People love to be secure. They also want to be surprised, which is very interesting. But yes, you have to be aware of all those things, and this wheel is the first step of your awareness. So I'm going to provide you with a PDF of it, but first I want to discuss very fast. So you can say, hey, I want to 10 in all categories, this is what I do, and I think it's fine, but you have to rank all of those dimensions due to the position where you're at right now and where you're gonna be in the near future. For example, if your financial is at 2 right now, but you know there are gonna be some money coming into your bank account, well, that's maybe gonna boost it to a 3 or a 4. It's a personal scale. It's relative to yourself. It's how you feel things are in your life, because at the end of the day, being content is something that's it's an internal feeling. It's not something external. You can never compare, because you can never be the best on a particular item. You can never have, for example, the biggest house on earth, right? There's always gonna be a guy who's gonna want to have a house bigger than you, and it's just gonna be a massive competition, which is not very helpful in terms of using your resources. So you have to have standards which are independent of others, right? So I'm gonna tell you the dimensions of life that I found are kind of meaningful. Well, as I stated before, one is health and physical body, the other one is emotions, romance and relationships. Then we go to number 3, which is time. Then at 4th we have meaning, mission and spirituality. And it works to combine those together, because yeah, otherwise you'd have so many dimensions and you already have lots and lots of them. I decided to separate friendships from the emotions, romance, and relationships and put it at number 5, because for me, well, relationships, I tend to either go on the business side or on the personal side, the love side. So I just wanted them to be separate. At the 6th spot, I've got knowledge and intelligence, which is basically a form of growth and the form of gauging where I'm at in learning new things. Then I've got celebrate and contribute at 7, and one of the best things in life is to try to contribute to the greater good through your actions. I found a lot of meaning in that, and hopefully you're gonna find too. Then I've got a big one on 8. I've got my finances, then I've got my work and career at 9, then I've got my business at 10, because I wanted again to have this clear separation, right? I'm not fully independent, I'm not fully going out to be an entrepreneur. I want to do both, to work in an organization and be an entrepreneur. And this is not half-assing if you know what you're doing, right? Otherwise, yeah, you have 95% chances of you just, not showing up. And then we have, at 11, we have self-worth and confidence, because I think that's another element of happiness. I think you cannot be happy without having a feeling of self-worth. And then, of course, there is a major element for me, which is the sex. And yeah, I know it just sounded, that was the cringiest introduction ever. But yeah, it's a major part of me and an area in which I want to be happy. And then I've got the productivity and growth, right? So this is what I'm able to achieve with regards to the amount of effort that I'm putting in and how much I grow doing all of this. And I've had this discussion and it's lovely, but it's a lot about the emotions that you feel on the road of discovery rather than the end of the journey, right? So this is my wheel of life, those are my dimensions of life. I managed to come up with 26 or 30, and I just had to cut from them. During some different, let's say, goal setting seminars, I decided to go with others other than this, but for the time and purpose, these are some that I believe are really helpful, because there is again a good separation between them. There is some correlation between all those, if you want to go very statistically correct on this. For example, there is an overlap between a relationship and romance and the time, or the work and the career, right? And this is why you have to kind of balance everything the best possible way. Also, time. You can say, hey, I have my own business and I have time. If I'm working more on my own business, doesn't that mean less time? Well, it doesn't necessarily, because by time we mean time well spent, and if you're loving what you're doing, well, props to you, you found a great one. So these are some dimensions of life, and again, you just have to plot them on a literal wheel. If you Google wheel of life, you're gonna understand how to plot them. Again, I will provide with some PDF. I'm not sure in which form, because if you're listening to my podcast, probably you're not gonna see a description with it. So I'm still thinking of how to do this physically, but yeah, hoping that this exercise is gonna help you, because the goal setting period of the year comes soon. I know we should set goals way sooner than that. I tend to set them in quarters, right? So 4 times per year, because that helps you being aware of the things that you have to do, of the big things. And then the small goals, I tend to have them in front of my eyes day in and day out, because otherwise you tend to just lose focus. That's how we are. We're not robots, we're not AI. I wish we were. But if you stuck with me this long, I'm so grateful to be able to speak with you. I'm so thankful to have been able to, just share my thoughts and ideas with you. And thank you so much for being there. I appreciate all that you're doing, and till next time, I hope everything is great. So I'm hoping you've enjoyed the 3 episodes that I selected. And those were all recorded at different points in my life. It's funny because my discourse changed, my capability to talk and to speak freely has changed as well, and hopefully it has improved, because none of those episodes were scripted before. I never have the idea of scripting things. This is why I actually prefer the interviews a bit more. When I go with interviews, I know the person that I'm talking to, so I know what I want to ask them, right? So I kind of have an idea of the things that I want to learn. But for me, those 3 podcasts that I share with you, are just ways in which I basically started to understand how I'm actually thinking by putting my thoughts into words and then sharing with you. And I'm hoping that people found value in them. And if you did as well, thank you for listening. And also, please, if you're so inclined, leave a comment and say what you enjoyed and what you didn't. Also, if you think I can improve something, that would be great. Please let me know if you feel like there would be any other better way to discuss these topics. Maybe you want to hear more stories, maybe you want to hear more hard facts, maybe you want to hear some lists or a way of synthesizing the information at the end. Please let me know, because that would be really useful for me and for you as well. And next week we're gonna come back to an interview, and it's gonna be an interview with a great friend of mine, I actually have such a major respect for the way that he's learning and for the way that he's studying. I believe he's having one of the most powerful brains that I've ever seen, and he's a guy that can share lots and lots of interesting information in the field of energy with us. And with that in mind, thank you so much for tuning in this week as well. It's been a massive pleasure, and despite all the flu symptoms, I've had a blast editing this episode, so hopefully you found it really interesting as well. Thank you so much again for all of your support, and feel free to like, share, subscribe, whatever the YouTube algorithm wants you to do.